Welcome back to the OPEX podcast where fitness is explained. On today's episode, I had the pleasure in being joined by CJ Martin and Tino Marini from Invictus CrossFit. On this episode, the guys and I discussed many topics, including business, training, life lessons, and much more. This was an absolutely great conversation with CJ and Tino, and I hope you guys really enjoyed. CJ, Tino, guys, thank you so much for making time. I know we've been trying to set this interview up for a while, and finally it's happened. So it's great to get you guys online. I would imagine there'll be very little people listening to this who won't have an idea of who you guys are. But let's fill us in the background, starting there with CJ.
Sure, yeah. I got into CrossFit about 2006 and enjoyed a couple years at the CrossFit Games. Got to meet James Fitzgerald in 2007 and competed in 2007, 2008. Really enjoyed the sport aspect of it, so we started coaching people for the sport of it. Really had athletes at the CrossFit Games ever since and qualified teams for 10 consecutive years, lots of individuals. Brought on Tino in 2010, and I think Tino's coached probably more individuals than a lot of folks in the space, and so lucky to have an awesome support team.
Yeah, I met CJ in 2010. I was actually visiting San Diego from a level one. I actually didn't meet him that time. I met Pops, and he'd been doing individual programming, so I actually jumped on board as a online client, and then from there we just built a relationship, and I kind of took an interest in online programming, and I was in a good position where I wanted to learn more about program design, and the online business was getting bigger, and the opportunity came up for me to kind of take on that role and start coaching people. And I've been fortunate enough to work with some really cool athletes and be a part of some great teams over the last few years.
I'll add a little fun link here with James Fitzgerald, and that is that I started doing online coaching for some people in late 2007. And this was obviously long before the OPT CCP. And so I started doing it just because I was a level one seminar coach on the weekends while I was still a lawyer. And I was sending people some programs. And then I went up to Calgary for the very first run of the OPT CCP. And then, quickly came back and looked at my programs, which had a lot of, Murphs and 100 rope climb workouts and stuff, and started like, man, I got to get better at this stuff.
Yeah, that's gas. I've heard you say that before. That's kind of how you came across James initially. Just an interesting question I would like to ask you boys as well is about your influences. So I know, CJ, you've mentioned obviously James being an influence, but who else has been a big influence on you, not only professionally but also personally? And then Tino, that question to you too after CJ gives his answer.
Yeah, I would say I love the question both professionally and personally. So Mike Bergner, he's obviously close to us here in Southern California. And his daughter Sage was our first weightlifting coach when we opened Invictus. And Coach Bergner, I've learned a lot about weightlifting from Coach, but I would say I've just learned a ton about who to be as a coach and the way he approaches life with the generosity of sharing anything he's ever learned and his curiosity to learn more. I mean, I think Coach is 72 now, something like that. He comes to any athlete camp that he can make. He comes to, Julian Pina's seminars we've hosted. He basically will go to anything to learn. And in his 70s, that's just always stuck with me. Like, man, that is what it takes to be great at something. And it's why he's as effective as he is. So I would say he's had a massive influence on me as a coach, even if it's not, the technical aspects all the time. And then from kind of more of the technical stuff, I would say, James, obviously, very early on. And then Charles Poliquin, I would say, has informed a lot of how we've written strength progressions and I would say those are probably the big three.
Great stuff.
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead, Tino. I was just saying great stuff. Thanks for that, CJ.
Yeah, well, I'm more of a CJ and I joke a lot where he's more of a bookworm and likes to delve into strength and conditioning books, and I'm the complete opposite where I learn way better being in the gym, and being around CJ is been like it's changed my perspective on coaching and the way that I write programs, and obviously known him since 2010, like I've learned so much from him, and it won't even be a case of like him even teaching me. It's just like simple things like the way he coaches on the floor. I spend a lot of time obviously looking at the programs that he's written, and I've just kind of been able to be a sponge and absorb a lot of that information. And I remember at the very beginning, we used to go to a lot of seminars, and they could be on any topic. We went to an FMS one. We went to a bunch of
Perform better.
We used to go to ones, and he'd say to me before it, he'd say, you might learn one thing from this full weekend, but that one thing might change the way that you look at program design or coach an athlete. And I always remember him saying that. And whenever anyone asks me about like, hey, like what book should I read, or what podcast should I listen to? I'm like, listen to everything, because you don't know what you're going to learn. You might 99% of it might be irrelevant, but that 1% might completely change that you write programs or coach athletes. So yeah, like I'm a product of the people that I've surrounded myself with, and I've been very fortunate to be around people like CJ, and I got to go and meet James probably 5-6 years ago now. That was a while. And I've just learned so much being around these types of people.
In terms of your continuing education, now, CJ, I've heard you previously on other podcasts, and you said in a few podcasts you spent an ungodly amount of money on education when you got into coaching. But I'm still going to pose a question to you for the listeners here. In terms of continuing education, what have been some of the standout continuing education, courses or resources that both of you guys have done?
Yeah, I think it's really morphed over the years too, and it morphs kind of based on your role also. But just to kind of recap the story, in 2009, it was really, like I had gone up to Calgary and done that, and then just realized, man, if we're going to be great at this, we should try to accumulate as much knowledge as possible. And prior to that, I had done it all through books. And I had read, I started with the CrossFit journals, basically read everything in a very short period of time, started digging into all the traditional strength and conditioning books, and then started kind of on the seminars. And in 2009, we spent, I think, well over $30,000 in certifications and education stuff. But it also really set us up to be successful with other aspects of the business because we had something to offer. And then, when you start doing all of those, you start to see this diminishing returns, which is kind of what Tino's talking about, which is you've heard a lot of the same information over and over. And so then what you're taking out of these seminars is, it's less, but it still can be majorly impactful. And so then I think it's kind of evolved into, we feel pretty good about a lot of the things on the strength progression side. So then it kind of switches from maybe Olympic weightlifting, like where we're really focused on a lot of Olympic weightlifting seminars. And then we're really focused on a lot of strength development or powerlifting seminars. And now, honestly, we've probably done a lot of like Eldoa, and, we've got a coach in the gym that's been doing all the functional range certifications. And so we're really trying to learn from that. So I would say it's kind of morphed into a lot of recovery modalities more recently, where we're really just trying to get smarter about how to keep people healthy for the long term, because we feel really comfortable that we know how to get people strong and fit, but we got to keep them that way, for hopefully decades.
Yeah, pretty much what CJ said in terms of like started off. I went to a lot of James's things, and then I was fortunate enough to go and do some of Poliquin certifications. And then as I've obviously got busier with our in-house athletes and busier with the online stuff. I've spent more time in San Diego, but being in San Diego is not necessarily a bad thing, because we get coaches coming through every other week or every month, or we're getting coaches who come in and coach at the gym, like Julian, like guys we've got in-house, and these people are becoming specialists in areas like Eldoa, and spending time with these guys has been awesome for me. Like I said previously, I learned so much better being one-on-one and watching people do stuff. So lucky enough that within Invictus, like when we've got Julian in town, I'll just, even if I've heard all the stuff before, I'll still go down and he'll say something different, or he'll say something in a different way that I'll kind of connect with, and I'll go and apply that to the stuff that we're doing. And it's the same as when Coach Burner's here as well. I've coached the level ones. I've been to at least like 6 or 7 of them, but I'll always try and drop in and spend a little bit of time with Coach, because he'll always say something different or say something new. But yes, the majority of stuff now is learning from the specialists that are coming into Invictus, and making sure that we're kind of focusing on recovery a lot more. Like CJ said, like the strength progressions we're comfortable with, all the weightlifting, and in recent times it's been more on recovery and making sure that our athletes are staying healthy and continuing to progress as the sport kind of gets older, so to say.
Great stuff, boys. Great stuff. Question I ask all the guests that come on, and very interested to get both of your guys' thoughts, is what are the good and the not so good things that you guys see within the entire fitness coaching profession? And with the not so good things you see, what sort of solutions would you offer? And another way that I've been wording this question lately has been like, what makes you proud to be in our profession, like in the fitness coaching profession? And then at the other end of that spectrum, what doesn't make you so proud? And with that stuff that doesn't make you so proud, what solutions would you offer?
Oh yeah, this is it's a great question. The easy one to answer is what makes you proud. I mean, we literally see in a very tangible way that we're changing lives, and it's part of, just as a quick aside, it's part of why we have gyms, right? We still have 3 San Diego-based gyms. We have 2 out in Boston under the Invictus umbrella, and we have the gyms because we can see what's happening with the human beings that we're honored to work with. It would be very lucrative just to have an online business or something, but it's why I got into this industry, was to actually help positively impact people's lives. And in the gyms, we see that on a daily basis. We get to talk to people that have, lost a significant amount of weight, that have met their spouse in the gym, that have had kids, with that person in the gym. And, all of that is, I think, what I'm most proud of. It's what, makes me want to continue to get better, because we can help people achieve their goals. We can help them lead, healthier, happier lives. And all of those things are, I think, why most of us got into this. I think, to go to the other side of it, the thing that is maybe the most concerning is sustainability within the industry. And as a business owner, my primary concern a lot of times is just, how do I reward great coaches, and how can we have these great coaches have 20, 30-year professions in a field that can be, taxing at times? A good coach is emotionally invested in their clients, and they're working hard, potentially either on the floor or behind the screen, or answering phone calls, and that can get tiring, and it can lead to burnout. And the last thing you want to do is spend 12, 15 years honing your craft and then find that it's no longer sustainable. So that's really the focus for me as a business owner, is how do we tweak things? How do we create a structure where great coaches can, continue on within our organization and lead a great life and continue to positively impact people for, a 30-year career.
And CJ, how do you hang on to those coaches? So like what is your solution to increase a coach's longevity within the profession? Is it just as a business owner, make sure that you show your gratitude towards them, you pay them good, obviously money's not the end of the world, but they're looked after well financially, there's incentives, how would you go about solving that?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think all of those components, right? You have to treat people well. You have to make sure that compensation's fair, that there's an ability to progress. It's the ability to progress that gets trickiest in the field, I think. If let's say you're doing online coaching, like Tino, I mean, I know Tino at one point, he had so many clients and he was doing a great job, but it was like, we looked and say, okay, something's going to give if we keep building. Either you're not going to be able to provide the service to these, athletes or that they deserve, or you're not going to be able to maintain your life balance, right? And so then we, of course, have to shift his role into an education role, right? He has to be able to help teach others how to do what he's done so that we can, create that same system and give the same quality service to others. And I think that's really the link that a lot of us miss in the fitness industry. And, I'm certainly guilty of not emphasizing it enough at times, but really providing opportunities for good coaches to educate other coaches so that we can, continue to grow that way instead of just expecting them to take on more.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good point in that, like one of the key aspects in happiness from just literature I read is that, people need to feel that they're growing and learning on, on a moment-to-moment basis, or, within the journey of their life, that they're continuing to grow and learn. And you kind of see that too in a progression of a coach, where initially they get in and it's just coaching clients and it's taking on clients and it's helping clients reach their goals. And usually, if they stay in the profession long enough, they start to get into this kind of coach to coaches mode too. It's kind of like their next growth in their journey. And that seems to be another thing that starts to inspire them. And you can see like a lot of organizations, like I know like a few organizations that I've seen, their coaches kind of initially start off in the trenches, and then they start to get these coaches to teach their courses and teach around the world. And again, to coaches, it seems to be a sort of a trend that people grow into, and it gives them sort of a more sense of growth and development and, self-worth as a coach. So I definitely can resonate with the answer you said there too, because again, you can't just be expecting a coach just to take on more and more and more and more clients, because something is going to give in terms of just the longevity of the coach or the quality of the service. So that was a very good answer. So Tino, what would your good and not so good things be, and just for the not so good, what sort of solutions would you offer?
The biggest thing that I see in the fitness industry is that the most successful coaches are the ones that care. Like CJ was saying, like, you're invested in your clients and making sure that you're doing the best for them. And whether that's from, like, I always have conversations with new clients. And I'm like, hey, like, we're going to provide a great program for you, but my first priority is to make sure that you're fit and healthy. And if you're fit and healthy, I know you're going to be successful. And whether that's like through recovery or mental well-being or like just doing the right things outside of the gym, because more and more people are so obsessed with the program or so obsessed with getting their workout in that they let everything else fall by the wayside. Outside of the gym, and then they don't see results in the gym, and they're like, hey, like, what's going on? Like, I'm putting all this work in and I'm not seeing the progress. And I'm like, well, what's going on outside of the gym? Like, how's your sleep, how's your nutrition, how's your stress levels? And then when you kind of delve into that more, then you find out that the reason why they're not progressing in the gym is that everything else outside of the gym is not going great. And it's making sure that they dial that in first and foremost before they actually step inside the gym, and that's kind of going to make them a successful athlete or a successful fitness person. So that's making sure that you care about that aspect of their life and not just focusing on what goes on inside of the gym. So yeah, caring is probably the biggest thing that I see. So both like a a positive and negative there. So if you care about your clients, then I think you're going to be successful. Care about your clients and write a good program, you're going to be successful. As soon as you stop caring about your clients, you could be providing the best program, but you're not necessarily getting the most out of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's you know, it's a tricky one too, in terms of, obviously, like, there is that saying, you know, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And that quote also has been like, it's been like accredited to so many different people. It's like Benjamin Franklin. It's like, no, it was Jim Rolls. Like, well, whoever said it, it's a good quote to have. But the one thing, you know, about coaching too is, like, we give so much of our energy and our love basically away from ourselves. And you can see that a lot of coaches, again, this kind of goes back to the question of like longevity in a career, they sort of nearly like just self-destruct because they forget then to take time for themselves in terms of, you know, looking after their health, be that mental, physical and emotional. So, like, what are your guys' thoughts on that too? And that, you know, so the question I'm kind of putting forth to you is, how important do you think it is, like, to kind of love and know thyself first before you give that away?
Huge, huge, yeah. I think in recent times I've kind of been way more aware than that. I've got a 19-month-old, and I've got another one on the way. And I think looking after yourself is, I mean, you're useless to your clients, you're useless to the business that you work for if you're not fit and healthy. And that's something that I kind of pride myself in. I try to do that. I try and structure my life that, so if I can control everything that I can control, then whatever's going to happen out with my control, I can deal with. So I kind of like try and make sure that my lifestyle's on point. I try and make sure that my sleep's on point. Try and make sure that everything that I know that I can manipulate, I'll try and control that, so that when things come up or things don't go right or something out of the blue comes up, then I can handle it. Otherwise, I feel like I'll just implode and self-destruct. And even this year, after games, it's been the last 2 years actually, it got to the point where we finished games week, and the full week after games, I felt unwell. Like I felt great up until then, and it was like Monday, it was as if someone had like stuck a needle in me, and I just exploded. And I think it was just a build up of like how long this season is, because now the sport has grown so much that you haven't just got the season from the Open until, I mean, from the Open until games, it's still a long season, but now you've got Wadapalooza, and now you've got all these other big competitions that you're preparing athletes for. And when you invest so much time in them, you kind of take on a lot of their stress, and it's making sure that if you're coaching 15, 20 clients, and you're taking on their stress, it's like, what are you doing for yourself, and what are you doing to make sure that you're able to continually push them, continually get them ready for competitions, and then when they're in competition, like dealing with all their stresses. And we're fortunate enough, we coach a lot of people. Take games for example, you could be with one team who are doing awesome, like on a high, and then the other team just had a terrible event. So it's like dealing with that high and then coming back down and having to bring that other team up or the individual up and make sure that they're ready for the next event. So there's so many coaching. I've been on both sides. So like I've been an athlete at regionals as an individual on a team, and I would say coaching is way more taxing and tiring than actually competing. So yeah, there's just so much to take on, and it's important if you look after yourself, then you're going to help your clients. So.
Yeah, I would I would be the counter to that. I think Tino does a great job of fitting things in, but the guy's up at 4:30 in the morning to check in with clients and everything, and then making sure that he gets his own fitness in. I've struggled with it a lot more. It's definitely been the one thing in the last 10 years that has been the most difficult for me, is finding that balance where, I'm giving to my athletes. I've got, 2 young kids at home, 5 and 3. I've got gyms to run and employees, and I have not always done a great job of balancing that. And so it's certainly something that, I would identify as my, biggest struggle in the last 10 years. And it's something that, constantly trying to work on. get in what I can and be proud of the stuff that I can do, and instead of focusing on all the shortfalls.
Yeah, listen, we all have our demons. I think too as well. There's you know, I often ask this question, and it's it is a really tough one to fully answer and fully appreciate when you really think about it or meditate on it. Is like, well, what is true health? Because I think the majority of people, we'll just say the lay population, just for the context of this conversation, like I think they think like, you know, health has to be like, you know, regimented exercise and like a strict diet, but there's so many other factors to health, like, you know, obviously there's emotional health, there's your social interaction with your friends and your family in terms of health. You know, it's not just an exercise and nutrition piece, and obviously there's a stress management piece, so to be able to respond in situations rather than react. And I think a lot of people like can be like, oh, if I'm not training, you know, 4 days a week or 5 days a week, you know, I'm not in control of my health and my wellness. Whereas like you can meet other people who they literally just maybe go to the gym twice a week, but outside of that, they're very active. They walk, they garden, they cycle. They're always socially interacting. They're on top of all of their, you know, responsibilities in terms of their work and their finances, and they're vibrant when you meet them. Do you know what I mean? And then you're just kind of like, God, those people are just winning at life, and it just looks so easy to them because they have more of a sort of holistic outlook on what true health is, rather than this sort of like, if you don't train, you know, 10 hours a week and, you know, getting your macros in, and, you know, whereas that becomes a stressor in and of itself. So I think we just, for the majority of us, and I speak as someone who's on this journey too, and I struggle, like, you know, with the same issues that you guys spoke about there as well. I just think we need to have more of a universal outlook on what true health is. It's not just the nutrition and exercise piece. There's so many other factors to it.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's a point that also gets confused, especially within the, you know, the sport aspect. And you know, in a fairly young sport, we're not seeing a ton of our athletes. You know, we haven't seen them at the end of their careers yet, right? And in fact, if anything, we've seen a lot of guys trying to extend their careers now with masters divisions and stuff like that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we have to acknowledge that there's a big difference between general health and, you know, the sport of fitness. And I think those can get confused in this space very quickly.
Oh, massively. And myself and James speak about that all the time. And I've often had this conversation with other people, you know, the difference between sport and health. Like they're two completely different things altogether. Like I always say to the guys over here in Ireland, like, you know, there's nothing healthy about rugby. Like smashing yourself into someone over and over again, like, you know, at almost car crash, like, you know, speeds. Well, maybe not quite car crash speeds, but slow car crash speeds. But at the same time, listen, that's the cost people pay for the sport they love. And as well, when people are aware of the trade-off, there's no judgment in that either. But yeah, it's a huge point that I think, again, and I don't like to be generalizing when I say the lay person or the lay public, but again, just for the context of the conversation, it makes it easy. But majority of lay people confuse sport and health. They think they're the same thing, and they're just not. Like,
yeah. And we I mean, we've always done this, but we've made a point to really make sure that we counsel athletes through that. In the sense, even in intakes where we'll talk about, you know, what are their goals and priorities. And, you know, probably the best example I've always used is Val Voberall. You know, I coached Val for 5 years, and we were very clear that her priorities were to her daughter, to her husband, and she loved her career as a teacher. And then the sport had to work around those priorities, you know, rather than her priorities working around the sport, because we had to be clear that, okay, it's all right if you want to pursue this sport, but let's not, you know, lose sight of what's actually important to you. And that's where I think, just for the, you know, the lay person and the general public, is it may not be healthy to, you know, be browbeating them into 4 workouts a week or 5 workouts a week if that's not really their priority. If their priority is just to, you know, be healthy, have longevity, and, you know, lead a life that kind of suits a bunch of different goals, we've got to figure out where to work fitness into that, versus, you know, really trying to work their life around what we do in the gym.
Great stuff. whichever one of you guys want to take the lead in this next question, you can go ahead. But the question is, what is the training philosophy of Invictus? So people kind of I'll just clarify that question more, because people usually ask, like, can you clarify that more, because it's a bit general. So to me, your training philosophy is kind of like your why. And then after this question, I'm going to ask you about your training systems, which is basically your how. Then, like how do you put your philosophy into action? So what is the training philosophy of Invictus?
Well, I think that, I mean, the poem kind of, and that CJ always uses a Gandhi quote, satisfaction lies in the effort, and
not in the fulfillment.
Not in the fulfillment. Full effort is full victory. And the conversation that I kind of always have with athletes, and even in-house and online, is like, I'm only looking for your best effort. Like, we're here to make you the best you can be, and all we ask is that you go into the gym and you give your full effort for that day. And that full effort could be like coming in and just mobilizing, but just making sure that you do it to your best. And people take that two ways. They might come in and think they have to go hard every single day, and I'm like, no, that's not what we're kind of looking for. It's more like, we want you to come in and understand that every day is going to be different. But all I'm asking you is to go in and get the most out of your day. And that could be working at 70% effort or 80% effort. But our goal is always to make sure that we're striving toward making the guys who come into the gym and our online athletes the best that they can be.
Yeah, and I would say that, really it's the reason that we're called Invictus is the Invictus poem, right? And you could tell by looking at me, I did not get into this because I was a bodybuilder or total gym rat, right? I got into this because I believe that we can change people's lives through this medium. That this medium, of fitness allows us to, create an environment where people can fail safely. Right. And so we can start to set people up, and we can establish character traits like goal setting and perseverance and practicing overcoming obstacles and, living with disappointment and coming back from it to achieve those goals. And so I would say the philosophy has kind of been built more around that, which is purely character development and how we create mental resilience in our populations.
Yeah, that's two savage answers. And on Tino's point there about doing your best every day, it reminds me of the book, The Four Agreements. The four agreements being being impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, never assume, and always try your best. So the fourth agreement was always try your best. And, the basic takeaway from that one was, what's the guy's name again? Don Miguel Luis. That's the guy who wrote the book, isn't it? I think I'm saying that right. But anyway, the takeaway from the author was that, that your best in every given moment is always going to be different, and it's always going to vary, given to the environmental circumstances you face. But he's like, all you can ever do is your best in that given moment. So that kind of resonates with me, what Tino said there. And I had another point there I was going to say to CJ, but I've kind of just slightly blanked on that. It'll come back to me now in just a second. But moving on there from that, boys, going into your training system, what would you say? Regards to your training system, when a client shows up, what does that look like? So from assessment to programming, then to monitoring, take us through the whole shebang.
Yeah, I think it typically starts for us with consultation phase, which is really getting to know them and understand what their goals are and why they have those goals. After understanding what the goal is and why, we'll, depending on the client, it used to be something that I did with everybody. Now we do it with people that we think we, require it, but we'll go through even a full time management thing. We'll kind of go over, okay, what's your average day look like? We'll ask them about their core values and their priorities. We'll ask them to list what their ideal day would look like. And we'll kind of look at, how far apart are they? And we'll do that because, for the example, like I provided with Val, is if somebody says, they want to win the CrossFit Games, but they have all these other priorities in their lives, then we're not going to train 4 hours a day. We're going to figure out how can we train as effectively as possible in 90 minutes a day or whatever that's going to be for the individual. If they're totally unencumbered, on that stuff. Then we'll start to kind of move into more of the physical assessment. And the physical assessment will typically be, comparatives to, things that we've done for a long time to get a sense of kind of where they're sitting, on the journey toward their goal, right? Get just a very basic sense of their starting point, depending on their goal. So if their goal is to win the CrossFit Games, we've got to test some basic things to figure out kind of what's holding them back from that goal. And then after that assessment period, we'll start to really design programs around what we're seeing in the assessment, and constantly communicating. I would say that that's probably as much as anything in our system is that, it can frustrate some athletes, but we'll write on the back end a macro cycle that, maybe several weeks, but we'll never publish more than a week to a client at a time, because I don't believe you can move on to week 2 until you know how week 1 went, right? And frankly, that is a lot more time consuming as a coach, but that's part of our system, is that we believe there has to be a constant dialogue and feedback, that we can't just spit out a program and expect that everybody's going to follow the progressions in the exact same way and keep pace, or and so it's really kind of getting that constant feedback, and even with the respect to our group programs, we're monitoring. I mean, Tino does an amazing job of moderating a forum all day long, pretty much, and he's always got his phone on him and checking for notifications to see when people, because if in a group program we're seeing people struggling with the same things, it's going to change even the how that program's going to get tweaked for the following week.
Great stuff. And just before we move on to that, and Tino, obviously I want to get your input too on that, because I have no doubt that you want to add to that too. How do you guys go about setting realistic client expectations?
That's I mean, it's always a battle, but you have to be genuine with people. You got to create some guidelines in terms of what a realistic expectation is. And we often do that with timelines, right? So if somebody says, okay, just using the general, like, oh, I want to win the CrossFit Games. You say, okay, well, that may be a big task. Where are you at? And we don't ever want to say, oh, you're never going to be able to do that. We want to be able to encourage them and motivate them toward a goal. But we may also have to be really honest with them and say, okay, well, right now, based on your numbers, you could be 6 years away if you make great progress and stay committed, right? And then we need to see how that athlete reacts, because if the athlete's like, oh, no, it's not worth it, then we're never going to tell them, oh, well, yeah, sure, we'll get you qualified right away, because then it's going to be a failed relationship. They're going to be angry or regretful that they went on the journey, and we'll probably be angry that we didn't tell them the truth to start with, to set the expectation properly.
Like having small incremental goals, and breaking that down. I mean, when you, even from goal setting to program design, it's like you've got your macro template, then you've got your micro templates within that, and the goal setting is exactly the same. As when someone comes with like a goal of winning the CrossFit Games, we have to back it up a little bit and be like, hey, like, let's start here and see where we go in the next 46 weeks, and then once we get through 46 weeks, we'll reassess and continue to build on from there. And as long as they kind of buy into that, then they're always going to make progress. And that's probably the easiest way to kind of describe it as that.
Great stuff. And CJ, I remember what I wanted to say to you there a few minutes ago. You spoke about, fitness being a medium to enhance, your clients and your athletes' lives. And I interviewed a coach on my own podcast, Zach Evanesh, back last year in 2017. And No, I'm not. I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said here, but he basically said like what he does in the gym with his clients and athletes, he wants it to transcend the gym walls. And I always love that saying, that he basically wanted he basically wanted what he develops with his clients and athletes to transcend his gym walls and bleed into their lives and make them better people. And I always just love that saying, transcend the gym walls. And I often have said as well that, that fitness is just a medium. And so when you just said that, it really resonated with me too, because like at the end of the day, every human being's looking for the same thing. And really that's just ultimate happiness. We're all looking for our own heaven on earth, but how we attain that happiness or that heaven on earth is where we individualize. So like, as I always say, like for a musician, it's bringing music into creation. For a master chef, it's creating a master meal. For us as coaches, it's helping to facilitate clients and getting a fulfillment from that. For a doctor, it's, helping someone survive a terminal illness or a life-threatening situation. So there's many ways we go about attaining our heaven on earth, but just when you said that fitness is just a medium, that really resonated with me, and it just reminded me of that phrase from Zach Evanish, that he wanted what he built in the gym to transcend the gym wall. So that's great stuff, boys. Just kind of going out from philosophy back into sort of the mechanical pieces, just with your assessment again, from a movement standpoint, what are you guys doing there? Do you have your own standard movement assessment? Or have you taken pieces from like FMS and FRC or some stuff from Kelly Starrett and kind of melded into your own piece? Or what are you doing from a movement standpoint?
Yeah, I honestly, and this is not to say that there isn't great value in some of those, but I actually don't start there. We actually start by getting athletes, to kind of perform the tasks that they say are important. And then we dig in when we notice issues. And for a lot of reasons, I find that, with things like the FMS, with, Gary Gray's stuff, it can be extremely nuanced. And it can also create problems for athletes, or create in their mind problems that may not actually be, issues in their performance.
Yeah.
And so like, if you take somebody through FMS, like how many people pass rotary stability on the first try? Like, I mean, it's pretty rare.
When you say first try, do you actually mean people pass it on second try? Because I'll tell you right now, I've done about 1,500, maybe 2,000 FMS screens in my life, and I've only ever had 1-3-3 in a rotary stability. They're always they're either ones or twos in the fucking thing.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you just a quick kind of tangent, but I with my FMS, and there's also many aspects of what we do. There's the aspects of, if we're coaching a high level athlete, in the gym, and their goal is to, a very high performance goal, then there's going to need to be, maybe a more emphasis on really nuanced, smaller things, right? Mm-hmm. If we're just talking about our group coaching, we've got members coming in that want to lose a little weight and train 3 days a week. You got to be careful about how much you give them and how much you point out. And so my quick little tangent is that in 2009, we opened Invictus. We were like, all right, we're going to FMS screen everybody that comes through the door. And as part of their, initial consultation, welcome to Invictus, we do this FMS. And then we've told all these people all these things that were wrong with them. And then, we would offer up like some private training, but if they couldn't afford it, then they would just kind of jump into groups, right? Which is your worst case scenario, because you've just told these people like, oh, you have terrible rotary stability, you're a little tight, maybe you shouldn't be going overhead, and just go ahead and jump in and do what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. Like you don't have a toe touch or an extra leg raise, but yet you're going to kettlebell swing in this class.
Right. So we, and obviously that changes when it gets to individual athletes and how we coach people in different aspects. But even with our high level athletes, there's a psychological aspect of, if we're, going through these full assessments before we know that, there's a problem or a plateau or potential for injury. I don't know. I think sometimes we can make mountains out of molehills. And so we tend to get them moving first, and assess through movement. And then once we notice something that is, say somebody's got a really kind of tight T-spine, or their overhead stability looks compromised, then we'll dig in. We're pretty lucky to have some guys here that work out of our Sereno Valley location that are really, really talented with that stuff. And that's all they do. So we take care of more of the performance aspect, and we'll ask them to kind of fine tune our athletes and get all of that stuff, hammered out through ART, through some movement therapy and new activation. And that is why we're very interested in like the FRC and LDOA stuff, is that we're figuring out where we add those tools when we need them.
With your more general population now, would you have a more standard sort of assessment intake with them, rather than so it sounds like with your athletes you'd like to reverse engineer, you like to just see them move, and then if you see an issue then you'll break it down. But with your general population, how does it go? Is there more of a standard assessment with them before they engage in anything at Invictus?
Yeah, there is. But like I said, it's not when we say assessment, right? Our assessments are going to be kind of movement based.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're watching athletes move. We're asking them to lunge and looking at the way they lunge and figuring out if there's something wrong with the pattern, right?
Yeah.
We're not going through an FMS and then assigning scores and then creating a program based on the score that we've seen.
Yeah.
It's like I've just seen too many things. Like I've done the Gary Gray stuff, and you can be off by a few degrees on some of those assessments, and it may change the way you coach somebody. So I guess to boil it down, what I want to do is I want to coach the person in the movement, not provide a shotgun approach to the assessment and then start from there.
Yeah, I got you. So listen, you boys at Invictus are like well known for just being an absolute pod for developing these savage athletes in the sport of fitness. So my question to both of you is, what are the essentials to being a savage in the sport of fitness?
Probably the biggest one is a good training environment. We're lucky enough that CJ's obviously had teams qualify for the last 10 years, and those teams might have not had the best athletes on the planet on them, but they trained every single day together, and just having them in the gym and having that camaraderie and having that training environment, it pushes people to places that they never believed that they could get to. So for me, like, training environment's like hugely important, and one of the reasons why we've been successful in the sport, both on a team and individual level.
Yeah, and I would say I'm going to give you the one that I think is most overlooked, because I would say, my initial is confidence. You have to have confidence. But I think the one that is probably the most overlooked characteristic of elite athletes is consistency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Kristen Holta's, this is year 6 that I've been working with Kristen. And I would say that Kristen's consistency is why she is the athlete that she is, right? She continues to improve. She's taken 7th at the games the last 2 years. And, but when you watch her in the gym, it boils down to this very simple thing. She does the things she knows she should do to improve. And that sounds like a pretty easy task, but that's, how many athletes do you see come into the gym that say, okay, I know I need to do this certain warm up, and I know I need to do this activation, and they do everything they need to do, and they do it every single time they come into the gym. And I think that's rare. I think it's more rare than most people like to admit. But she does it, with her nutrition, which is not extreme. She's never she's never binging, and she's never like, counting every piece of, morsel that goes into her mouth. She's just consistent with everything she does. And I think we've seen that our top athletes really live by that consistency to what they know is going to help them.
Sweet, great stuff. Just a final question there in assessment. Moving from movement now, going more into like physical capacities. Do you have a standard like testing template of like physical capacities? Like, are you always wanting to look at, things like people's cleans and snatches? Now I'm talking about the athletes, the actual people who compete in the sport of fitness. Like, are you looking to see where they're at in terms of their Olympic lifts, their power lifts? And then obviously, do you have a profile on energy systems? Or again, are you kind of reverse engineering, like seeing what their past performances are and then kind of breaking it down from there, like looking into, I think they're weak here, let's go after this, and make an assessment from that. So how does that piece look?
Oh no, yeah, we have quite a few testing templates. So that's how we start almost all of our athletes. Is they'll go through one of our testing templates, and we have everything from 1-day combines that give us snapshot on some strengths and several different energy systems, to, I think our longest is a 3-week protocol to really get a lot of good information on the athletes, and we keep those as static as possible. And part of the reason we keep them as static as possible is the part of the assessment is not just the assessment of the athletes, it's assessment of the competitive landscape. And so we need to know, where is that athlete as compared to other athletes?
Yeah.
And so we try to keep those pretty static so that we can look. And we've even had we've got a very cool mathematician member, and she helped us put together all these graphs and spreadsheets that show kind of area under the curve and all these aspects. And so yeah, we can get a little bit geeky about that stuff, and sometimes we do, and then sometimes if you got an athlete that's pretty far off from their goal, then sometimes we'll just kind of dig in more to where we know that they need to go, and we'll save some of the deeper graphing of all their results for a little bit later down the line.
Just I know I asked both of you guys what do you think is essential to be a savage in the sport of fitness, and you both gave great answers. If I was to word that, what do you think are essentials from a physical capacity quality standpoint to have in place to excel at the sport of fitness? Because I've heard you in previous podcasts say you believe strength is the cost of admission. Like, what else do you think is very important to have in place from more maybe of a physical quality biomotor standpoint?
Yeah, I'll always stick to that. I think strength has to be number one. If you are not strong enough to move loads in the sport, you are not going to be successful. There's no element of mental toughness, grit, or aerobic capacity that can get you around having to move loads that will be expected. And I think it's been interesting to see what those loads have done over the years. I thought that the CrossFit total this year was really interesting when you're getting an average squat of 295 pounds for females, which is more than double the average body weight. A 300-pound squat was a 21st. If you had anything under 300 pounds, it was 22nd or 21st or worse. Females, to look at that, I think is instructive for a lot of athletes who may have high ambition, but are squatting 235 pounds and doing 3 conditioning sessions a day. I just think it's foolhardy to structure training in a way that if you don't understand kind of what that strength requirement is. And honestly, I think sometimes secondary to strength, there has to be a mobility piece, right? which is just, is simple, especially overhead mobility, which I would say is the most common one that we see, is like you need to take phenomenal athletes that have amazing capacity and maybe really fast hips and really strong legs. But if they can't support overhead because of structure or injury, it's going to be really tough to compete in this sport, which requires a lot of that.
Anything to add to that, Tino?
No, I'm on the same, like strength is the price of admission, and then overhead mobility, and then obviously the mental aspect of the sport's huge as well, and not even from your mental push and workouts, but just your mental ability to sustain long seasons. I mean, you look at what the seasons are going to look like now, where a lot of athletes are going to be competing all year round. Like, the mental aspect, that's huge. Like, your ability to go in and perform multiple times per year, like from a mental standpoint, is just as important as the physical standpoint. So yeah, the mental space and obviously the physical space and the mobility space seem to be the highest priority.
CJ, I've heard you mention that Charlie Francis' work was an influence on you, and Charlie obviously had his high-low model, which is how he managed his microcycles or weekly setups. Has that influenced how you manage your microcycles?
Yeah, definitely. So we try to kind of undulate throughout the week. But yeah, I mean, I think that, and then with our athletes in the gym, it's a lot easier too, right? Which is that we can simply have discussions, and if we need to change days around, then we do that on the fly.
Great stuff. What is the big differences, would you guys say, between the training of male and female fitness competitors?
I think.
What did Tino say?
Tino said diligence. As in the females are more diligent than the males. I'll be honest, I don't love the question itself. I think the question is the wrong question to be asking, because I think our approach is that we do use templates. So we use template for our group training because we've got, this last year we had 24 athletes go to regionals just from the San Diego gym, right? Wow. And so when we train in that environment, we get all the benefits of that environment. So we have this group, right? And so we have to look at that group, and we can look at that group as, okay, athletes. And then you could break that into a subsection of males and females. But at the end of the day, as coaches, we have to be able to see each person as an individual athlete, right? And so even within our females, there are going to be differences in how Maddie Myers needs to train and how Kristen Holta needs to train, because they have totally different energy systems. They have totally different strengths and weaknesses. And so then we start to shift around there. And so when the question comes up, males versus females, I always say, well, now we're just breaking into it's still a really large subsection. And I don't think we're getting any specificity in there, because some of our females, on the whole, our females tolerate volume way better than males.
Yeah.
But that's not true of every male. And then even with our males, like Tino trains Garrett Fisher, totally different, or we train Sam Dancer, totally different than we train, some of our like Ricky Moore, who's been on our team, who's a smaller athlete, great capacity, but we have to train them different. And we have to train, different movement patterns, different energy systems. And so then what we do as coaches is we look at, okay, what is the group doing and what alterations can we make for each athlete to make sure that we can all train together as a group, but these athletes are still getting what they need from each other.
Yeah, no, it's it really is a question that needs to be followed up with more context. But I suppose, it is just a question in terms of like just getting a general sort of sense or essence of what is usually a difference between males and females. Like you touched on one there, generally females can handle a little bit more volume because again their outputs aren't as high as males. It's like the other usual one I see is that females need to do more upper body work in like in comparison to males. Obviously, then that's not to say that every female that every female is like an upper body would be a priority for them, and then it wouldn't be for a male. That's not to say that, but just in general, you do see the females usually do need to spend more time in the upper body department than the males.
Have you seen any shift in that over the years?
Well, now I don't train as many CrossFit people as you do, so you guys may have noticed the trend.
Yeah, so I would say, so we actually used to, in most of our workouts, we would scale the number of repetitions for females and males in things like muscle ups or strict handstand push-ups or ring dips. And we've actually noticed over the last, 3 years, the females have often eclipsed the males in that area. So their strict upper body strength relative to body weight is normally better. And I haven't dug into, at kind of what levels, but like we would look at the CrossFit Games 30 muscle ups for time. And I think that delta has really shrunk down. And for the top females are real close to top males.
Oh yeah. But that's because, again, the top females have built up their body. So I'd be more like, if you were taking like, novice wouldn't be the word, but like someone like we'll just say novice, but a novice male versus novice female getting in, like they're in the early stage of their CrossFit career or sport and fitness career, generally you're going to see that the female's going to need to do more work in her upper body strength in comparison.
Yeah, I think that's probably right at the novice level. I mean, as a generalization, but again, that's why we kind of get to that where it's like, are these generalizations meaningful, or do you still just have to look? And that's why, in our testing protocols, our muscle up or handstand push-up density tests and stuff like that, we're looking at that as a number. And then for all those athletes, because if you've got a heavy male, Garrett Fisher is heavy and has long arms, he's got to do more upper body work too, because he generates all his power through his lower body, and we've got to get him strong enough to support his loads.
Just before we go on any further, how much time do you guys have left?
We're good, whatever.
Yeah, cool. Just in terms of programming, like I know you guys said you kind of, you like Tino, you kind of said there is a macro plan, but we still go week to week, because we got to gauge how people are feeling and just how the training's going on the more micro scale. But in just the planning, organization, training, do you guys still have a sort of template of, it's a little more of accumulation phase, and then it's a little more intensification, then it gets more into like competition specific as the season goes on?
Yeah, we definitely do that. There's definitely a progression according to that person's season, and that person's season might not be geared toward the CrossFit Games. It could be geared toward another competition.
Yes.
In January. So everyone's going to look slightly different, and within that macro template, you're going to have micro cycles that develop and eventually peak them for that competition. That's super important over the years to make sure that we're preparing people for the right times.
I think everybody right now in this space is scrambling to figure out, because now you've got athletes potentially preparing for a lot of different competitions all over the place, and I think our first concern with the new structure is how do we provide athletes with that true season and an accumulation phase where we're not constantly peaking for competition.
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's just constant high intensity inputs in the nervous system over and over again. I know how much James loves high intensity. But no, that's great stuff, guys. I just want to ask more of a business question now, CJ. In terms of what you offer at Invictus, you offer both individualized and group training. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Just talk us through that. Talk us through that structure. Like, how does that work underneath one roof?
Sure. So we started as a CrossFit facility. Obviously, we still have a CrossFit affiliate. At the time, it was all group sessions. But even from day one, when we opened our doors with 5 coaches who all did a fairly substantial amount of private, one-on-one training. And we believed in that, we believe that in order to truly, hone yourself as a coach, you have to have that opportunity to work with one-on-one and really try to solve problems in a different way. And so just because we run group sessions doesn't mean we throw that out the window. It means we create space to, have that as an offering, as a separate offering. And then what I really enjoy is that we also have a combined offering, which is group coaching plus additional private sessions, right? Which is how we've set up our standard membership, is that it's a group coaching membership plus a one time a week private coaching. And that one time a week private coaching may help our coaches start to, dig into movement patterning problems, and also help them understand kind of their plan within even the group sessions. So it's our ability to continue to impact more individuals through the groups, but also to have that depth of impact through those one-on-one private sessions.
And just with the individualized programming, are they always going to go in and do their individualized session with a coach, or is it they have their program and kind of once they're competent and up and running, they can come in and do their session, but there's always a coach on the floor?
Yeah, we've had both offerings. And so typically more popular is they come in with a coach.
Okay.
But we certainly have a larger group, especially of the guys that are, somewhat competitive. So they've always had, so in other words, people that are very familiar with the movements, they move well, they've kind of gone through that phase of working with a coach, but they're doing supplemental stuff, or kind of they're following their own program that's been written around a competitive goal or something like that, then they'll come in separate.
Okay. Just for myself here too, I just want to get, just in my own mind, just want to give it more clarity. And I'm sorry now if I'm repeating myself here to you guys. Just again, with regards to, where we take a client, just a general population person, their main goal is just to be healthy, longevity really. They mightn't come in and say longevity, but they're just like, I want to move better, feel better. And then you have your athlete, someone who's in the sport of fitness. They come to Invictus. What does that process look like? It's like, I know you said like there'll be a consultation and discussion, but like, I suppose, what does it look like for the general population person? What does it look like for the athlete from day one? They've never been to Invictus before. You've never met them. So like, what exactly does that look like? Just so I can get that more kind of clear in my own mind.
Yeah, it's pretty similar. It's they each come in, it's consultation. Who they do the consultation with might change based on whether they're a competitive athlete or a general member, but they'll do a consultation. The consultation will be to ask them about their goals, and so your general population might just be to, I'd like to lose a little more weight, have more energy around my kids. And then there will be an assessment in terms of like, okay, how do we get you there? Which for both the general pop and regular or competitive athlete, maybe to understand what kind of timelines they have, depending on their goal, how much time they have to train, to dedicate it, if they're going to be coming to the gym 3 days a week or 5 days a week, so all of those discussions, there's some movement. Then they go into, for our competitive athletes, they'd go into, some baseline testing. For our general population, they would go into working one-on-one with a coach for, their foundations type sessions, get really up to speed, make sure that we know that they can move safely, make sure that they're familiar with movement before they jump in if they're going into group sessions. And then they're kind of jumping into groups, again, whether they're general member or elite athlete. If they're an elite athlete, they're jumping in, they're training with our group of elite athletes. And if they're general member, they're coming in and they're, being introduced to their coach, and they're kind of assimilating into a group session with that coach that onboards them.
Cool, yeah. And just like, what's the timeline of that? Like, is that all once, so they come in consultation, and then you said there's an assessment there? Like, do they do a movement assessment, and then is that all one day, or do they come back and then are those sessions with a coach one-on-one?
Yeah, the sessions are, so the consultation won't necessarily be with a coach. They might be with our, gym manager, and kind of going through kind of all their lifestyle stuff and goals. And then the foundation, it can vary, but it's normally anywhere from 6 to 10 sessions.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, if somebody comes in and, they're a former college athlete and do really well, then they may skip some steps. But for the most part, we try to get them through a little bit of a curriculum to make sure that they feel comfortable here and can, succeed instead of feeling embarrassed because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. In terms of just like sleep, nutrition, and lifestyle education, what do you guys do from that perspective with all of your clients and athletes?
Yeah, so with our general population, our coaches are normally doing a good job, especially in those private, right? That's why we like that Invictus standard where there's that one time a week check-in with their individual coach who has a better relationship, deeper relationship, and can really dig into some of that stuff. Otherwise, it's education based through kind of emails and substantive articles that we're sharing. But the bulk of that should be coming through their relationships with the coaches that they interact with.
Sweet. All right, I'll wrap up with a few. Now I say they're quick fire round questions, but some people always say these require longer answers. So your answers can be as in depth as you want to be. But first one I want to ask both of you guys is, what have been the biggest lessons that you've learned so far in your life and careers? Now it could be just one major lesson, or it could be maybe one or two or three lessons that you've learned so far in your journey.
That's a rapid fire one, huh?
You have to be like Zen, just a Zen answer.
Don't be scared to make mistakes. I've learned more from the mistakes that I make than I have in the successes. And make sure that when those do happen, that you step back and you assess and make sure it doesn't happen again. And whether that be from coaching or like out with the gym or from program design, like it's going to happen, but you're going to learn more from those mistakes than you will from anything else.
Very good. It's like the Ryan Holiday's book, "Obstacle is the Way." You can either see things as an obstacle or an opportunity. So I love it, Tino.
Yeah. Gosh, I'm not sure how you narrow one of those down into life lessons, but I would say it's something based around integrity and how I treat people.
Great stuff. How do you guys learn? What is your learning process? So what I'll further say, just to clarify the question, is there's something you want to know about a certain topic or area. How do you go about that?
For me, it's head first, and it's normally books or in-person discussion with the person that I want to learn from.
Very good.
Ask CJ first, and if CJ doesn't have the answer, then I'll look to other avenues, and particularly usually from the source or some sort of article. But that's usually my second, third, or fourth.
Yours is pretty experiential. If you like to dig into it and do it, I feel pretty comfortable. But when I say head first, it's like not being satisfied with the one article I find, but like trying to read 18 articles on the same thing to see if there's any variation or difference.
What is your top resource to everyone listening? And again, to kind of maybe just make this question more specific, what is one thing you'd recommend to everyone listening that you think could potentially enhance their lives? So the resource now could be a book, a person, a course, whether it's online or in person, a podcast you listen to, just one resource that you think would profoundly help everyone.
I don't think this is the answer you want, but it's our athletes in-house. I learn more from those guys than I do any book or any fitness professional. Like,
it's a great answer. Great answer.
Today and seeing those guys train and seeing what adjustments we need to make to the program, and because we didn't really touch on it, but a lot of the programs that we provide online are based on the things that we learn inside the gym. So if we didn't have those in-house athletes, the majority of our programs wouldn't look the way that they do.
Yeah, my answer isn't much different. I was going to say family, and with a loose definition, which is that the people you surround yourself are going to be the people you learn the most from. And so whether that's, in a conversation with Tino and bouncing things around, or, it's like, actually my next meeting is here, but it's like, there's going to be a group of 5 of us just sitting around talking about big picture, how we want to see things happening. And I think that's invaluable, because you have to be able to see the results of it, and then get that instant feedback.
What is one thing that you guys do every day that is essential to your day?
Try and work out for 30 to 40 minutes before I have to do everything else. Spend time with my family.
Great stuff.
Yeah, I would say, and it's tough. You say every day. I don't get to do it. I don't get to, do necessarily be physically present for, but it's like that, putting my kids to bed, or at least having that final conversation with them before they go to bed if I'm traveling. I would say, it's that touch base. And I would say that my kids have been really good for me, because I can go, I have the ability to focus really well. So I can be really hyper focused on something, but I could do that for days. And kids always kind of break you out of that, where you just kind of can at least step back and say, okay, what's important to them right now is totally, irrelevant to whatever project I'm on. But it allows you just that true, genuine opportunity to connect to their little souls and hearts.
What's next for Invictus?
Oh, man. I think continuing to learn how to do things better, especially just on the education side, is how can we, one thing I'll just say is that I've always had a huge amount of respect for James, and it's part of the reason, we've never done, certifications and stuff like that, is I always said, James is 10 years ahead of me in this, and I felt like I've had so much to learn. And, now 10 years in, I feel a little more confident saying, hey, maybe we've learned some things that we could help other coaches on board. But I never wanted to skip that step. And I see a lot of people jumping that step and marketing themselves as experts before they've really achieved. And now 10 years in, I think that we're starting to look at, okay, what are the things that we've done that are unique that we may be able to offer up to some of our coaches, both in-house first, internally, is getting all of our coaches, to a level that we're super proud of, and they can all be educators themselves to those that may not have been surrounded by as many opportunities as we have.
So can we expect an Invictus coaching certification in the future?
No, maybe not anytime soon, not anytime in the next couple of years. But that's the gearing up for me is, okay, I've been, coaching athletes for 12 years. We've had 10 consecutive years of putting teams and individuals into games. And now I probably need to step out and, Tino has always been a quick study, and we've spent obviously a lot of time the last 8 years together. But if we really want to grow this and continue to see the success, it's going to call for me to step back a little and focus a little more on educating other coaches that can work with Tino and work under Tino, and probably less doing of the coaching.
All right, gents, last 3. This one may slightly overlap with the question about your biggest lessons, because sometimes they do. But what would your top piece of life advice be to everyone? So if you had to leave a piece of advice behind to the world, what would it be?
Be present in what you're doing. So whether that's with your family, with an athlete, someone you meet in a coffee shop, like, just take that moment to be present and make sure that you take the time to show them, especially, your closest friends and family and the people you work with, like, take that time to be there and present with them whenever you're with them.
I think for me, it's that, give your full effort, right? Is that I don't really care what people want to pursue or what they're interested in, but, put yourself out there and go all in. And, that is certainly what I did with this. I transitioned from law to owning a gym. And originally I was going to work 50% as a lawyer and try to run the gym on the side. And, kind of at the last minute, I just realized if I'm going to be successful at anything, I've got to commit to it. And so I guess that would be my.
That was actually something I did want to ask you about, like your whole journey from law into like, just into CrossFit, and then obviously opening up Invictus, like, because it sounds like it was a pretty wild journey too. Because I heard you on some other podcasts saying that, you initially started off 50-50, and like I said, that workload was, I think you were saying like you were doing like some like law stuff then at night coming home from coaching, and you just be like up to like burning the midnight oil, and you're like, this isn't sustainable anymore. I got to make a choice. I got to make a choice here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did that actually before I opened Invictus, which was helpful in the sense that I knew that I loved this enough to make it a full-time career. But yeah, I was working, I was opening the gym at 5:30, coaching from 6 to 8, going to the law firm from 8 till 5:30, 5:45 at night, coaching from 6 to 8 p.m., eating some dinner, then going back to the office till, 1 in the morning until I had gotten enough work done. And then waking up at 5 and doing it all again, and did that for 18 months. And it definitely had a lasting physical effect. But that was kind of how I knew that this is where I belonged and what I wanted to do. And so despite the fact that it might have ruined me physically for a long period of time, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Man, that sounds horrendous. I'm not gonna lie. I just get this picture of you, like, you're after coming in from coaching, gobbling down your dinner, and then like, you open up whatever work you had to do in terms of like your law stuff, and then you're just about to fall asleep and you go, fuck it, he's guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I wasn't impacting people's lives like that. Just large money deals and for insurers we're gonna have to pay.
It was more like corporate law, was it, TJ?
I did securities fraud litigation. I defended Fortune 500 companies.
Not gonna lie, I have, and I haven't a clue about any of that stuff, and I don't really want to either.
Yeah.
So, boys, last two for you, two big, profound ones. So you'll have to use a bit of brain power for this, or maybe not. Maybe you have your answers ready, set, because you think about this stuff. You've only got 1 year left on Earth for whatever reason. How would you spend that year, and why?
I'd fly all my family in, I'd probably fly all my closest family in San Diego and make sure that I spend as much time with them as possible in the last year.
Cool.
Yeah, and I may go the other way, which is I may try to take all my family traveling, but try to, with kids that are 5 and 3, try to get as many experiences with them as possible.
Yeah. Someone actually made I can't remember who said to me, but they were sick because they had kids, and they were like, they'd probably film as much of their last year and like, leave it as like a documentary to their kids. I thought that was a pretty good idea as well. So I thought that was a good idea. All right, last one, boys. I'm in town and I say, CJ, Tino, you two guys are absolute legends, and I want to spend more time with you whenever we get a chance to meet in person, and I want to take both of you for dinner. And so I invite both of you guys out for dinner, and I say, CJ, you can invite 5 people. Tino, you can also invite 5 people. And the 5 people you invite, guys, can be dead or alive. Who would you invite to this dinner, and why would you invite them?
Oh, man.
I definitely have to invite my wife.
Good call.
And not even just because she's my wife. Like, she's extremely knowledgeable, and she always.
Of course she is. She married you.
Yeah, exactly. I'd definitely bring my wife. I'd definitely bring David Beckham, just solely because like he's experienced it. I don't know. I played soccer. I played pro soccer growing up, and he was kind of the person I always looked up to. And just watching his career and what he's achieved both on the pitch and off the pitch, I just find it really interesting.
Hey, Tino, you're by the way, you're talking to an Irishman here. It's football.
Yeah. Yeah, soccer, football. I know. Yeah, hey, come and live over here for a few years, and those words will start slipping in.
Oh, listen. I've lived in America for long periods. I am well aware. I had to change how I used to tell the time. What time is it? 2:30. And they were like, "Sorry, what? 2:30."
Put it in the trash or the trunk of the car.
Yeah. Or I'm going to get my I'm going to go to the supermarket to get food, and they were like, "Your groceries." I was like, "What are groceries?"
Yeah.
We just say food shopping over here.
Grocery. Yeah, there's so many. Yeah, I actually have to change the majority of the words that I say. So
it's funny. All right, so we have your wife. We've David Beckham.
David Beckham. I bring back Poliquin.
Cool.
Just because Charles Poliquin.
No. I said cool. I know who Poliquin is. I said cool.
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you said what. Just solely because he's, for me, one of the most knowledgeable people I've came across in the industry, and like a lot of our strength progressions and the way that I look at program design stem from his teachings. So that's 3. Jeez, this is not hard. 5 people is a lot.
I like that these are your rapid fire.
I know,
questions. These are like the deepest questions we've got here.
Yeah, but it's all in the moment, on the spur of the moment. Because a lot of people, they start to panic and go, "Oh, if my answer's not profound enough, I won't sound smart on the podcast." It's like, just whatever's on your mind and heart in the moment, guys. Be authentic. That's what I say.
I would do John Wooden.
Very nice. Wooden's cool.
Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski. I would do Jimmy Fallon.
Nice.
Jimmy, because he's one of those people that seems to excel in every aspect of his life, but he's also somebody that seems to get along with everybody.
Yeah. He'd be good crack. He'd bring a lot of banter to the dinner.
Yeah, good uniter. I think Mahatma Gandhi. And I don't really know what my 5th would be. I would say Warren Buffett, but after watching the documentary, because Warren Buffett, the thing I appreciate about Warren Buffett is that I felt like he lived for excellence. He didn't live for the money. And it translates into the way he lived his life, very simple. And his kids went on to do incredible things. But then after watching the documentary Becoming Warren Buffett, I thought there were some startling aspects of his life that I may not want to know that may change my perspective on that.
Cool. I appreciate the honesty. Tino, you still have 2 more, but you're not getting off the hook.
Just going through. There has to be a football manager that I wanted. And the one that kind of springs to mind is Jose Mourinho. Just solely because of what he achieved in the sport after not being one of the top professionals in the world, and how he kind of worked under so many great coaches and learned so much. And I've not really enjoyed what he's done probably the last couple of years, but previous to his second stint at Chelsea, I found it pretty fascinating that how he was able to kind of develop. I mean, you remember that Porto team that went on to
win the Champions League. Yeah, that was his first kind of big one. Yeah.
And like that, to take a team like that, like with players that are pretty mediocre, is definitely a talent in itself. So Jose Mourinho. Who else? One more. It'd probably be, I mean, CJ said Gandhi, but it'd probably be someone like Gandhi or Gandhi would be. Can we have the same person?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's your dinner,
yeah. We Gandhi.
Boys, listen, this shows.
Who are your 5? Who would you bring?
See, people. I was wondering if you boys would ask that, because people do have to kill time to go, who are your 5? Well, I think of mine.
We asked those at the end, so you've had time to think.
Oh, no, listen, I've answered this question loads of times, so I'm well used to it. But, what I'll say is my 5 will rotate every now and again, because it depends on, what you're reading at the time and who's top of mind awareness. But my 5 would be, there's a gentleman called Joseph Shilton Pearce, whose writings were profound on me. He wrote a lot about, human behavior, human, child development, spirituality, evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology. So his writings are very profound. I would bring Jacques Fresco, who was the founder of the Venus Project. He was a futurist, and he designed a resource-based economy for the world. And he was a genius, and he's just a guy I would have loved to have spoken to. Abraham Lincoln, I'd like to bring Martin Luther King, and then like it's a toss-up between like loads of people here. Like for whatever reason, I would like to sit down and talk to Paul Check because he's a crazy bastard. You know. But other people that, and I know that's 5, but other people that could potentially be in there would be, I wouldn't mind talking to JFK. You know, I think he's an interesting guy. I've read some biographies on JFK. There's who else did I have in there before? Because I've studied a lot of the American presidents, so I'm intrigued by some of your presidents, like, you know, Teddy Roosevelt, FDR, you know, pretty intriguing, you know, Thomas Jefferson, all these guys, like, but there was someone else there. Gandhi is one that would be there, definitely, without question. As I said, Martin Luther King, he's already in it. There was a few other names there that I had. But they would be guys. So, like, if I had to bring it down to 5, it would be Joseph Chilton Pierce, Jacques Fresco, Lincoln, Martin Luther King, and Jesus. You know, I wouldn't mind that. Now, just to let you guys know and the listener know, I am absolutely the most unreligious person in the world. So I'm not a religious man, but I know this is everyone's thing nowadays. I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual. You know? But if you were to ask me, do I believe in a higher source, or like, is there something bigger than me in this universe? I would probably say, yeah, I do believe that there's something else out there. And whether Jesus was real or not real, just even like if he was made up, just even have the made up Jesus down at dinner just to chat to him and see what he was like. You know, come on, Jesus, turn that water into wine. Do it.
That's a good one.
But
You'd be a great dinner guest if that was going to happen all the time.
Oh, I know. Jesus, can you turn this check into like not a check anymore? Because this is a big check, these big dinners. But no, listen, they'd be 5 I'd bring, and potentially others that could fit in at any time, depending on like where my mood's at or whose work I'm reading at the time. There's loads of people, but they're on my mind right now. Listen, lads, this was a fantastic conversation. I'd love to have you back on because there's some deeper things I'd love to get into, like a little more about, again, the program, maybe more the technical aspects of the program. And kind of usually when I interview people for the first time, I get a lot into like, you know, more philosophy stuff about them and their influences, because I think it sets a good frame of reference for listeners to kind of know more about the person that they're hearing in their earbuds. But listen, that was Savage. Just before, by the way, Savage, I Tino probably knows what that means, but just for... Yeah, savage means good. I get a lot of American people are like, what? Yeah. We say savage in Ireland, yeah. Or deadly is another word we say. Like, if something's very good, we go, oh, that was deadly. And then, like, people from America think that's a bad thing then. Or no, it's a good thing. Before I let you go, where can people find out more about Invictus and what you guys have to offer?
Just CrossFitInvictus.com or InvictusFitness.com. And I'm sure we have Instagram handles. I'm just not a social media guy.
Yeah, I can
post Invictus.
Yeah. I'll get all that stuff in the show notes afterwards. Don't you boys worry about that.
And then any questions and stuff, usually go to info@invictusathlete.com.
Savage.
Yeah.
Right, boys, I really do appreciate your time, and just stay online for like an extra minute while I wrap up. So for everyone listening, I hope you really enjoyed that interview with CJ and Tino. Make sure to check out Invictus CrossFit when you get a chance, because they're doing great work over there. But from myself and from the 2 lads, I will talk to you all soon. Take care. Peace.